Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. Randy Swaim joining us live here from the Dallas, Texas area. He is just an amazing soul, bringing freedom to potential with Coaching for Relevance, the name of his company. And yeah, he is not only a coach, I can't even tell you all the amount of things he is, but he's a great person. He's an author.
Thank you.
And he's here to always inspire us. I mean, I know titles aren't everything, right? You're just Randy. That's
That's
person
right.
he is, with all the accolades and all the education and all the credentials and skills he has under his belt. But we are honored to have you here each and every week. And I always must start with, you got to talk about yourself. You are, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I just, my big thing is, and by the way, I just have to say that I appreciate you also very much here as a friend and as a colleague and everything. So no two ways about it. But for me, I don't bring a lot of this attention just to myself. That's not what I'm about. I mean, I appreciate the comments that you're saying about me. No two ways about it. But I do bring a lot of the kind of stuff you're talking about with the stuff on it. But but for me, I want to do things that bring aspects that help people out there. And even after I take my last breath one of these days, that people may not remember my name, but what I hope is that they remember that there was this guy that brought this one thing out and they applied it, and boy, it made a huge difference. And that's what I'm all about. I'm not just trying to bring attention to myself or anything, but I've been able to be involved in a lot, as you know, with the Hollywood movie documentary and my autobiography and all that I've been doing in aviation and all that kind of stuff, and just leading and coaching and developing jet pilots and everything. So just glad to bring some awareness on some things and just some positive aspects.
Beautiful. And what do you want our listeners to know today? It's always a great conversation what you bring here to the table.
Well, to be honest, what I thought I would do today is bring a basic concept that's related to neuroscience. As you know, I'm a certified neuroplastician over in ION, the Institute for Organizational Neuroscience in Germany, but also the NPN hub over there. And the aspects of your brain and how it's either being effective or getting in the way somewhat is what leaders need to understand. And so what I was going to do today is bring a couple of aspects about that, and really pretty the neurotransmitters and what we have to be aware of, and how in some ways that can be doing something that's not good, but what we need to be aware of, and some things we need to think about.
All right, I'm ready to go. Randy, by the way, just curious, you personally,
so that's what I thought.
Let me ask you just quickly though, what is your week like on a daily basis? You make the time, you're on a show every week, but you are, I can only imagine, running here, there, everywhere. You're on calls, you're on Zooms, you're at the airport. I mean, how do you manage it all?
Well, most of it, I live alone here in the house. So, I mean, if I need to go do a lot of stuff, I can do that. But there's, a lot of the week is spent over at the airport, in developing and certifying jet pilots and all that kind of stuff. But I also have some aspects, and a lot of the stuff is just contributing some of these things to Rising Stars. In fact, today we had our last Trinity Trojan thing, but that brings a few leadership high school students, and hopefully as they graduate and move forward, they can bring some of that awareness out and everything. And but it's just that a lot of that kind of stuff. And of course, I go on Wednesdays and Sundays. I go to church, my church and stuff, and connect with people and bring awareness to some folks and stuff like that and everything. And so it's just literally everything I do on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it's with friends, sometimes it's with big professionals, and all that. So I just am sort of amazed at what seems to be happening and what seems to be maybe on the threshold going forward possibly. And so just looking at all that and how that might work.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, my friend. So, where are we going to start today? What word of advice? How are we starting? Give us the story. Break it down.
I'll tell you what. To be honest, I'm going to be bringing this one aspect that really involves the neurotransmitters that our brain does. But what I want to do, and I mentioned these very quickly a long time ago on the show and stuff. But what I'm going to try to do today is there's a lot of people that employ it in a dysfunctional way because they don't fully understand it and everything, and they could be doing something that's not great and everything. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the just some basic awareness of the neurotransmitters out, but also then I'm going to kind of bring out a couple of things that leaders need to be aware of so that they're not being led in a dysfunctional direction or something. It's something that leaders, particularly if you're dealing in, and as you know, I've got a program that's approved for me out of Washington, has been for years, called organizational maneuverability, and it's about leading people and developing in a rapidly changing, unpredictable environment and everything. And this is going to be very aligned with that sort of thing. So it'll bring some things out that people need to be thinking about and be aware of, so that when they make the leadership decisions, they can actually be successful and right and not just off in another direction or something. So if you want, I'll go ahead and get started.
Beautiful. Go ahead, darling.
Okay. Well, I tell you what I'm going to start out with is the neurotransmitters and what most people realize, and this is dealing with neuroscience. But one of the things that the brain, of course, the brain has a number of aspects about it. The frontal lobe, which is sort of a processing lobe, and then you got the cerebellum back here, which is just where you're going with your comfort level kind of thing, and that's not always right, kind of everything. But what happens is as the brain goes through this whole process and everything, and a lot of people think that whatever they're thinking about is just right, and this is just it. Well, maybe not be. And what the brain does is once it senses certain things, it releases the neurotransmitters. And I'll just mention each of the 5 neurotransmitters to the people that are listening, just so that they're aware of it if they haven't heard of it before. But basically, the 5 neurotransmitters that I will mention is one of them is the norepinephrine, and this is a chemical that the brain releases, and what it does is it alarms the siren, and it basically makes people think that they either have to leave or get into a fight and fight the threat, kind of thing. It generates that part of the aspect of it. The second neurotransmitter is the transmission of cortisol, and really the cortisol is simply the chronic stress hormone. So if you're constantly being stressed, it's the cortisol that can sometimes be released there. And what happens is when your brain releases these chemicals, it makes your body sort of sense, because it's obviously releasing chemicals to your body and everything. And the cortisol is basically when it senses the stress hormone. The dopamine fix is one when people are looking to really be applauded and rewarded. Basically when it releases dopamine, it triggers a real feeling of reward within the person as it feels their body and everything. And then the other two is serotonin, and basically serotonin brings on a calm state when we can kind of relax and humble and just relax or sleep or whatever. And then the last one is oxytocin. Okay. And oxytocin is what our brain releases when our brain senses that we are releasing and thriving socially and everything. So those are just the 5 neurotransmitters. In fact, they're the 5 that I included in my autobiography on Amazon and everything. But here's the thing that I want to kind of point out to people, because when you talk about people in today's world, a lot of times they have situations where they're, that chemical gets out here and they feel that and they say, well, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do that. Well, you know what? Maybe or maybe not. It may be that your brain is releasing the neurotransmitter because your brain is not processing it accurately. It may be that you're simply going back to the comfort zone back here or whatever that is causing the problem, and so you're not being effective with it. And it's just some aspects about it, um, because a lot of people out there in today's world have a tendency to just say, well, this is what it should be. Do this, we got to do this, and kind of thing. And you know what? Your brain may be wrong. What your brain came up with that made it release that may be something that is not totally correct or is not bringing a key truth into the situation. And these are just aspects that a lot of people don't understand, because when people are feeling certain things, they think, okay, well, my brain, I just got to do this. This is what we got to do. You know what? Maybe, but maybe not. And the bottom line is what most people in today's world have sort of missed the boat on is the aspect of when they're able to process that and clarify it rationally and expertly. And so you got to kind of be aware of that a little bit. And when you got somebody on your team that's maybe doing something that you didn't expect, and sometimes you get dictatorial and overcoming and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
you sort of have norepinephrine maybe kicking in rather than some of the other ones, which you can do better. And I think I can't remember, Jill, if I shared this on the show a long time ago, but there was one time when my girlfriend, this was back, holy cow, this is around 1996 or so kind of thing. So about 30 years ago or whatever. But we were coming out of a place, and there was a guy and his girlfriend that looked like they were being, controlled and mistreated by three thugs out there in the parking lot. And when it sounded like it was going someplace bad, I told my girlfriend, I said, "I'll tell you what, you get in the car and lock your door, and you don't come out until I tell you to." She said, "Okay." And what happened was there came a time when the big one of the three thugs grabbed the girl's, boyfriend from behind and really like this. And the guy's trying to bite his hand to try to get him to let go of it. Well, I walked over there, and what I did very simply is I grabbed the thug's hand and I leaned down calmly and told the guy, I said, "Okay, let go of his hand. We'll get out." As soon as I saw his teeth let go of his hand, I pulled the thug's hand out and I twisted it where I knew he couldn't hit me. And I put my hand in and I just spun the guy out of his hold. And I stepped in between and I looked at the thug, and very calmly, instead of threatening or playing stupid games that a lot of people play in today's world, I just looked at him and I said, "Listen, buddy," I said, "you can yell, scream, shout, whatever you want, but this fight is over." And that's all I said. And the thugs never tried anything with them again, and they ended up leaving. And I saw the guy's girlfriend over a little ways over there. I think it was at their car, and I simply walked over to her because you could tell she was nervous and all that kind of stuff. And she looked at me, and all she did is she calmly said, "Thank you." And I said, "My pleasure. I'm glad you guys are okay." And I walked over, and my girlfriend just lauded me all over the place for how I did what I did. But you know what? Doing it right in any situation, that when you're a leader, doing it right, where you're not just dictating and controlling and threatening and playing dysfunctional games and all of that kind of stuff, magical, results can happen. But you know what? If all you're doing is using the norepinephrine or something like that to try to threaten people and make sure they just kind of submit to you and shut their brains off and all that kind of stuff. If that's what you're doing, your team is not developing success. And so when we're leaders, we have to be able to realize in what sense, because there can be times when we're the leader, there can be times where our brain is releasing one of those chemicals perhaps norepinephrine or dopamine or oxytocin or whatever, can be releasing that chemical to make us feel something. However, very often our true situational awareness is not there so that we understand what our real thinking is that's making that happen. And is that real thinking for this situation? Or do I have to kind of rethink it a little bit to be aware of this situation? If it has something like in that situation with that couple, if I was just trying to, throw in dopamine and go in there and, this kind of stuff, guess what? It would have probably been a big fight,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But the bottom line is when you're talking about these neurotransmitters, they are the right chemicals sometimes that the brain can release. But the thing that I want to tell people is simply this, that when you're the leader of your team, it could be that the neurotransmitter that is being released, it could be that you're going with rote academic thoughts that are not true. And guess what? If all you're doing is going back to your cerebellum back here, which is your habit pattern and your comfort zone, guess what? It may be that the reason you're releasing one of these chemicals is because your processing is not taking place. You're not fully aware of what is truly occurring. And when you talk about leading your team and developing team and becoming successful in
Mm-hmm.
a organizational maneuverability concept, guess what? If all you're doing is getting your people to just shut their brains off and just capitulate to you, you may not be doing it right. And you may not be developing, and you may be completely dependent on one neurotransmitter that's not the real one that needs to happen right now for this situation. So it's just kind of a thing on that. It's because the brain, like I said, the brain with what it's doing, the brain is the one that will release that chemical and make you feel and experience certain aspects from your brain. And the neurotransmitters, just being aware of what they are and how they're doing it, but also be aware of how your brain may be getting into a potentially dysfunctional thing where it's letting one go because it maybe wasn't aware of this factor or that factor or whatever, kind of thing, and just be aware of it. Um, so one of the things that if people sort of sense that on the neurotransmitters and the chemicals that your brain is releasing, you need to have absolute clarity on the reality of the situation that your brain is seeing. And the bottom line is um, that that may or may not be exactly right, depending on the situation and everything. And so it's just something to think about when you're talking about um, leading your team in a challenging situation and things of that nature. Because again, the neurotransmitters, as I said, based on what your brain is sensing and being aware of and all that, guess what? Your brain is then going to release the neurotransmitters, which are the chemicals that make your body sense and feel something there. And, are you sure? Are you clear? Now, I will say this that so many people in today's world, with whatever they're feeling, they just want to say, that's it, move, that's it. And they, make everybody else just shut up and capitulate to them. That's not being professional and it's not being real. And it's also not being a real leader. The bottom line is if you're aware of the neurotransmitter that your
Mm-hmm.
body is sensing and you're aware of the reality of the situation, really,
Yeah.
that is processed up here and how aligned that is, then that can be good. But if all you're doing is going back to rote academic, little superficial factoids that you're used to, if that's what you're as a leader, if
Facts.
if those superficial factoids are the things that you've been used to for much of your career or whatever, guess what? It could be that your brain is just used to releasing a certain chemical tied to that. and yet it's not getting it done correctly. And so it's just an aspect that people need to be aware of in leading your teams, making the right strategic decisions so that true success happens and all of that. But just understanding what that's got to be about and what that's got to be. But also with your situational awareness as a leader, guess what? Yours part of your situational awareness is, are you aware of the chemical that it's releasing, but also are you aware of how your brain is doing that and why? Because it could be that there's factors you didn't notice in the situation and all of those kind of things. So there's just a lot of things like that when you're talking about challenging situations and, like I say, organizational maneuverability aligned and
Mm-hmm.
everything and also the neuroscience stuff. Guess what? There's just something that you got to kind of keep aware of when you're talking about these transmitters and what they're doing. And are you truly aware that when you sense that transmitter being released, you know that it's right? You're not just
Yeah.
going with the road academic thing because you're happy with it, but you know that it's right. And that's a key aspect that leaders don't often think about.
Mm. Well, thank you.
What's
Lots to
that?
think about. No, always. You with the conversation every week. We could talk about leadership in a different way, different form, different examples, different, and it just makes me think as a leader, and I hope other people out there too, about what really can set you apart. And wow, but can everyone be a leader?
You know what? I will say this: anyone
Mm-hmm.
can be a leader, but you know what? Some people need to be able to grow and develop and become a lot more and a lot harder than others. The bottom line is there's a lot of aspects about this awareness and other aspects of awareness that you have to understand and you have to really sense um, as to what it takes to be a true leader.
Yeah.
And basically, what do you need to do on any one person? What do you
Yeah.
need to do to get there? And have you ever done that before? If your whole mindset is just, well, it's just me to tell them what to do and they do it. No, that's not being a true leader. That's
Yeah.
being a dictatorial control freak and you know, manager and stuff. But the bottom line is true leaders understand aspects that many other people don't truly understand. But you know
Yeah.
what? That can help them truly lead their people in a better way.
Hmm. Thank you. Brandy.
Yes.
Well, always a pleasure having you here. I'm not cutting you short. We still got more time. And to kind of, circle down for the last few minutes.
And that's good with me because I, as you know, I appreciate you, and it's always a pleasure to be on here with you.
Thank you. I don't want to let you go. What are you doing the rest of the day? Like, I'm
Well,
coming over. We're hanging out. We're going to have coffee.
yeah. Well, I tell you what, if it the rest of the day I'm going to be doing some studying, some admin stuff and things like that. But then I'll be now this evening I'll be going over to church for a Wednesday night thing and everything, and and then tomorrow I'm probably going to be looking at writing up my next blogs and stuff. So it's just that, and then on Friday and Saturday I'll be back over at the airport. So it's a lot of stuff, but that's probably what I'll be doing today.
Oh my goodness. Well, you always have something. I hope you take some time to relax for you because you're always doing for so many. And for those out there that want some extra advice with leadership and coaching and all that you have to offer. And I know you always say just call. You have a question, call, no obligation, of course, to talk. And you're not that type of person, but I have to be that way for you. How can we reach out to my friend? Tell us.
And I'll tell you what, as you know, if all somebody wants to do is to have a short chat, then yeah, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have a certain need, yeah, we'll come up with something and everything. But if you go to my website, coachingforrelevance.com, on the homepage, if you go right to the bottom, and by the way, as you go down, there's two boxes. One box which highlights the Hollywood movie documentary. Somebody can click on that and then they can purchase it if they want. And then the other big box there is the autobiography, and somebody can click on that, and it goes to Amazon, and they can purchase the autobiography if they want. So, but on that homepage, if you go all the way down to the bottom, it has my email address, and it has my cell phone number. So if anybody needs to call or something, they can do that. And again, if they're just looking to have a short chat or something, we can do that. If they have a particular need that they're asking for, then we'll come up with something.
All right. Thank you so much, Randy. Always a pleasure to see you, to have you, and enjoy the rest of your day. And if you had to end off with a quote today, do you have anything? Do you have any quotes that
Oh,
you
wow.
usually
I'll tell you
say?
what,
I'm
I
not
don't know that I have a quote in
I
my
don't,
mind,
but
but well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I don't have any quotes myself thinking about it. If anyone ever asked me that question, yeah, I really
Oh,
don't.
okay. Okay. Well, the big thing that I might just uh, uh, kind of mention on this is that when you're talking about this aspect of, you know, making a difference in people or being better yourself, if your whole mindset is simply in just telling everybody who I am, if that's all you're interested in, you're not really getting the job done. If you want some positive things to happen, it's helping people get a sense of what you have to do to actually grow and become yourself and everything and all that kind of stuff. So it's just very good to realize, but it's not so much a quote, but I'll just simply people have heard me say this, and I think you've heard me say this
Yeah.
before that I was at the 335th Chief Squadron back in the Air Force, and General and Colonel Richard B. Myers was the squadron commander, and I flew with him and got to know him well. But he was handpicked to go. He was the very first Air Force, head person four digits and stuff like that, um, and everything. And it's just, you know, it was very amazing what I saw with kind of what he did and sort of how he did it, and didn't play crazy games, but really led people with connecting with them and all of that kind of stuff. And Richard B. Myers, I just so appreciate him. Don't even know if he's alive right now. I don't know. If he is, he's got my compliments. If he's not, he's got my compliments. So
Mm,
I just, but it's just, yeah, just some aspects about that it,
yeah.
with me in this aspect, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about just playing games, and it wasn't just about playing road academic games, but it's basically living through the journeys and
Fighting through.
connecting with the people that you're working with in a positive way
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff. So it's just something to think about that a lot of people don't often see.
Great, Randy. Thank you again. Love having you. Enjoy the day, my friend, and we'll talk again next week. Till next time.
Hello, I'm Randy Swaim. I'm a Marshall Goldsmith certified executive coach and the founder for Coaching for Relevance. Our vision is to bring freedom to potential in all that is across our path. And one of the things we really want to do, which is aligned with our aviation background, is to help teams and leaders break free of the gravitational forces that are holding them back and their success back, and help them soar to their altitudes. So that's our passion, and that's what we're all about.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.